it is very likely that the solicitor is being lied to as well. The court system is being lied to. The liar is very good at calling your bluff, at maintaining that no, there was no abuse, and they'll keep doing that long after the findings have been made, in many cases. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Survivor Diaries. The title of this episode is Court Proceedings and the Abusive Parent, and specifically we're looking at the liar in court proceedings and the misinformation that may be given by the abusive co-parent both to CAFCAS, to the court in the form of their statement, and it's in response to a specific question that I've been asked by a person through social media, which is that when I'm going to say he makes these libel or false claims to CAFCAS officers and to the court in his statement, he's protected by law and it's called privilege. And she's looked at the idea of libel and speaking to libel lawyers about the fact that false information is being used and to a detrimental effect. Obviously this can result in some kind of miscarriage of justice if it was then sort of like found to be the truth, and somehow the court didn't pick up on that, then that would cause obviously severe disruption to families, and if it was a situation where there was ongoing abuse, potentially it puts people at risk of ongoing harm, something that the family courts are receiving criticism for, and therefore something that the family courts need to examine and look at. I'll just disclaim, just to start with then, I am a solicitor in England and Wales. I am a family lawyer. In the episodes and in the vlogs I can only give very general advice. It is important to speak to a solicitor about or a legal professional about your own unique situation, and always I disclaim in these episodes and vlogs I am referring to Pat Craven's model of the abusive personality, the Dominator, and that is following an idea of domestic abuse as a continuation of the patriarchal society. There will be times, therefore, when I refer to an abusive father. Now, if you are non-abusive, and there are many non-abusive males that I speak to, there's a lot of people who are working with women that I speak to, and they are now in a relationship, and they are Pat Craven's friend character rather than the Dominator, and I know that they are perfectly able to sit and listen to these videos and understand that I'm referring to a patriarchal society and the more evolved way of looking at things, which is about people being equal, and they get it. They understand that it's not that I'm saying that all men are like this. It is just something that I'm using as a model. Okay, if you are a non-abusive man and you are experiencing ongoing difficulties with domestic abuse being perpetrated against you through the child arrangements, then you should be able to find information in this video series which is useful to you. And because you are non-abusive, you should be able to recognise it for what it is. I hope that assists people. It is something that there will always be people who are saying, well, what about, and there are people who want to complain for the sake of it. I've explained which model I'm using, and that will have to be enough for that. So, coming back to this lady who's asked me, and she's spoken to libel lawyers, and she understands that it would cost tens of thousands of pounds to pursue this. And while I understand the incredible frustration of dealing with the liar in court proceedings, I would agree that the difficulty here is that libel, for example, refers to public statements or public comments, and it has to show that there's a detriment to damage or reputation. Now, I'm a family lawyer, so I could be corrected if I'm wrong, but because family law is private, we're not going to meet the standard required for something to be considered libel. When it has a detriment, it tends to mean a financial impact to your detriment rather than an emotional impact. Again, I'm happy to be corrected by libel lawyers or defamation lawyers if I'm getting this wrong. So I don't think that's the route to go down, which obviously is going to leave us with the question of what can be done about it. Just before I go into that though, I want to just go through some of the difficulties that the abusive personality presents in family proceedings before going on to what can be done. The problem that we've got is that the abuser, as we know from Pat Craven, has two other parts of their personality, which is the liar or the persuader. So the liar will say that there was no abuse when there was. He will say that the mother was abusive. He will minimise the abuse. He will stop his own contact, for example, with his children, and then say that the contact has been stopped by the mother. He will say that he is being alienated rather than taking responsibility for his own behaviour, and the fact that the children and the other parent may be scared to see him, or they may be upset to see him, and there's no acknowledgement there of the fact that his behaviour could have this impact on the other parent and on the children, but instead the cry of alienation again. The persuader, being a blatant persuader, just coming back to the liar, also raises concerns about the other parent. They may raise concerns about their alcohol use or drug use, and they may raise concerns about mental health, their care of the children, and they may say things that are just blatantly untrue. And so what we do about that is what I come on to towards the end of this episode. The liar, very hand in hand usually with the persuader, which is another aspect of the personality of the dominator. The persuader will say that he's a good dad. He will spend time with the children doing things that they enjoy so that they miss doing that. He will manipulate the children in that respect. And I've covered in other episodes about how the persuader, or how this manipulation of the children can work in parental alienation by not following a common pattern of rules and expectations for the children. This is in a previous episode about the allegations of parental alienation. The persuader will say that the children miss him. He will say that he misses the children. He will say that he can't live without the children. He will say that the allegations, he may even acknowledge some of them or say that they were historic. And this allows the Kafkas officer or the court to think this is a changed person. What I want you to understand about the persuader, or about the abusive personality, is that they are very, very good at acting. The women that I speak to, the mothers that I speak to, are not stupid people. And this is something else that I keep saying. Domestic abuse can happen to anybody. The people that I speak to are very intelligent, and it's not as though they went on this first date and were told, they can't go out, or they went on this first date and got punched in the face and thought, this is for life. This didn't happen. There has to have been some kind of manipulation or some kind of act, and that is exactly what the court system, the Kafkas officers, the judges, the social workers, what they are all facing. This act, this persuasive, brilliant father, this father who maybe understands that, there were mutual arguments and, we were both as bad as each other, and I can see how harmful that was for the children. He persuades. And I just wish that the mother would also let go of the past, he says, and lies about what has happened. And then as soon as the court are not watching and he's got what he wants, then we're back to the abusing of the other parent through the child arrangements, where there is a lot of opportunity to abuse that co-parenting relationship, something I keep coming back to. The persuader is charming, articulate, intelligent, and even if they're not those things, they will come across as somehow vulnerable or lovable or something that they try to make people like them. That is what they do. It's a very narcissistic behaviour, and it's what they're very good at. They're already doing it with the victims, family, the victims' friends. What we don't need to happen is for them also to be doing it with the court system, which is what happens. I've heard judges say that, he looks like a nice type or a truthful type, and that's just, you've got to look at evidence before you can say whether or not the allegations of domestic abuse are true. And that is just a safeguarding issue. And yes, you do need to err on the side of caution, because we're talking about people's lives. You can look at the very pioneering work of some people, Rachel Williams, Claire Throssell, can tell you all about the dangers of court-ordered contact and how domestic abuse can just have devastating effects, be used for devastating effects, because domestic abuse, the abusive personality, it's not about spending time with the children, it's about continuing the control of the other parent. Luke and Ryan Hart, they can tell you the same about coercive control in relationships and what it's like from the child's perspective in that situation. And the court have a duty. The court have to help to end the problem of domestic abuse and end the post-separation control that occurs through the child arrangements. So that's the problem that's happening. One thing that I just want to clarify and clear up while I'm at it is something that frequently comes up, which is about the family justice system, including court professionals. And within that I include myself as a solicitor, barristers, judges, the CAFCAS officers. Quite often the solicitors are assumed to know the truth and therefore be kind of peddling the lie. So I just wanted to clarify something, and this is something that I've seen in family law and I've seen in criminal law, because solicitors are guided by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and one of our primary duties is about upholding the rule of law, and it's about an overriding duty to the court and not to mislead the court. We are not allowed to represent a client that we know is misrepresenting or lying about the information that they are giving to the court system, and that can be the family court system or the criminal court system. As a police station advisor, when I was training, one of the things I could not do is have a client say to me, yes, I burgled the house, but what I'm going to do is say that I was with my cousin who's going to act as an alibi. And a solicitor cannot then say, that's a good idea, let's carry on with that. They have to say then, I can't represent you if you're going to put across that account. I can represent you if you say no comment, but as soon as you start putting an account that I know to be untrue, I can't represent you. And it's the same in family law. And I've had it happen with clients where they want to put across something that's not the truth as they've told me, and I'm not allowed to represent them to do that. So they either have to change what they're saying to the court, or they have to find a different representation because I can't do it. And let's just talk about that for a second. So in a family law situation, this would be a person who's come to see me as a prospective client, and let's just say that they are a male and that they are abusive, just for the sake of argument in this example. And one of the things that they're saying is that there has been domestic abuse, but they're going to say that there hasn't, or they're going to minimise it, or say that they did make progress on a perpetrator programme when they didn't. And I need you to understand that solicitors can't represent them. We can't let them take those lies through to the court. We can't put those lies on the application on their behalf. It's more than our job's worth. Just consider this for a moment. I have spent 8 years retraining. And so I used to be a teacher, I'm now a family lawyer, 8 years retraining. And do you think that for one client, what I'm going to do is say, okay, I tell you what, I know you didn't hiss her on that occasion, but seeing as you're going to say that you didn't, let's do that. Now, do you think this abusive personality, when they're giving evidence, and when that evidence is being found to be untrue, and they're being proven to be a liar, the abuser has no problem or no difficulty blaming other people for their situation. So he's going to have no problem saying to the court, well, that's what my solicitor told me to do. And that is really serious. That is really serious, because a solicitor cannot mislead the court. It's very, very serious. We are officers of the court. And it's not worth my job, quite frankly. I'm not going to put myself at risk by representing somebody who I know to be lying, and who is equally just as likely to turn around and say, well, she knew about it, because I would then have to prove that I hadn't given that advice. So just a bit of an aside there, just to maybe take the heat out of the feeling that some people who are survivors of domestic abuse, and it's continuing through the child arrangements, and they get very cross about how their solicitor, how the ex's solicitor can let them say these lies. And what I need you to understand is that it's very likely that the solicitor is being lied to as well. The court system is being lied to. The liar is very good at calling you bluff, at maintaining that no, there was no abuse. And they'll keep doing that long after the findings have been made in many cases. So please don't worry if that is what the abuser is saying and you're saying, no, there has been domestic abuse. Until you get to fact finding, the court's made determinations, it's something that needs to be just needs to be demonstrated. So this comes back to the other thing, what is it that you can do? And this is something that you can do way before there's any court proceedings in place. So as soon as you see this video, in some cases, as soon as you understand that you are working with an abusive co-parent, and abuse always continues through the co-parenting relationship, so unless it's been addressed, chances are you are experiencing abuse, and whether that's through messing around with holidays and special occasions, as said in the last episode, or whether it's more sort of like direct intimidation, threats, however it's happening, it usually continues through the child arrangements. So scrap that, it always continues through the child arrangements. Way before then we've got to court, you need to be gathering evidence. It may be that domestic abuse happens and you need to have the evidence to show it to the court. So gathering evidence, what to do. You need to keep everything in writing. That's something that my solicitor said to me in 2004, and it was some of the best advice ever. So from that point, I wouldn't speak to him about things on the telephone. We only communicated by text message for years and years and years. And then there's years and years of evidence of the way that he is with me and the way that I am with him. So that was one of the best pieces of advice, and it led to the findings in 2014 of continuing domestic abuse through the child arrangements, being able to exhibit those text messages. You also need to seek support for your position, so speak to domestic abuse services, speak to your GP, something that I keep coming back to, speak to the school or nursery if that's applicable, speak to family and friends who may also be witness to some of the things that have happened, or they may be able to be present at handovers or when there's a FaceTime call and there has to be an interaction, just so that they can be in the background and hear what's happening. So that way you're collating your evidence, you're getting your evidence together. Also, keep a contemporaneous record. So you're actually writing down this on this date, this happened, and especially if you've got contact going on this day the children were like this before contact and this is how they were returned. It may seem like it's not going to amount to anything, or it may be fairly neutral, you may be even saying that the contact went well. Record it accurately and record it over time so that you then have this that you can refer back to as well. That's all about speaking to people, and it's all about the different ways that evidence can be presented to the court, and that's where you need to address the things that are being lied about. So because the question is about how to deal with the false information that's being provided from the liar to the family court, to CAFCAS, this is where you have to find the solution. So in the family court, at the place where you give evidence for your position, whatever the abusive personality is saying, and saying that it never happened, and etc., etc., this is where you have to set out your evidence. And you have to write your statement so that it explains what you want the court to find and how you can show that the court should find it, referring to the evidence. And that's something that we're going to do in a future episode, which is about witness statements and providing evidence for that. It's in this, again, in the evidence checking process of the fact-finding hearing is where lies are going to be uncovered. And also, if you haven't gone to fact-finding, you can be asking the court to make findings within a statement for a contested hearing, be it child arrangement, be it a non-molestation order. Again, it's going to come down to evidence that you have, and I can't stress the importance enough of getting evidence about your situation if you are experiencing domestic abuse. And I can't stress enough the importance of seeking support, not just because it gives you evidence, but because it's something, it's there, it's available, and because it can help you to get out of what is an absolutely horrific situation. So I hope that that's answered that question, and I hope that that's been helpful. Thank you once again for joining me on this episode of the Survivor Diaries, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode and or vlog. Thank you for watching, and bye.